So yeah, I think welcome everyone to the first Multiplier webinar. We've got a really exciting guest here for you today, but I'll tell people a little bit about Multiplier if this is the first time you're hearing about us. So we're an identity governance solution for GSM, and we're helping ID teams automate onboarding, offboarding, access requests, running their user access reviews. So this is an area that we're like super close to, and the reason why we decided to hold this webinar was to help those folks, anybody with a decent amount of like staff movement, people joining, leaving, moving, to really get their head around the risks, challenges, and sort of ways to optimize how they manage user access at their organization. So super excited to have our first speaker, Aaron Geister here from Trundl, who are a Platinum Solution partner. Before I fully introduce him and hand it over to him, just a little bit of housekeeping. Everybody in the webinar should see comments on the sidebar, so let us know if you're struggling with that. But yeah, as Aaron sort of speaks about this topic, and if you have any questions that come up, feel free to like leave questions throughout the session, and we'll cover those off at the end. So with that said, Aaron, welcome to this webinar. Why is this topic so important?
I think like one of the biggest things is like you look at the landscape of business is changing with security and compliance and things. So now IAM is starting to affect those areas. And I think the other thing is like some teams don't have like a IAM team. They just they end up passing it off to sysadmins, and they're learning on the go, and they're not really sure really what to do. And so I want to kind of help put it out there that there's help, to seek, and to help guidance for those that, aren't IAM professionals, but get stuck in that. And then also like, what are the solutions around? What are the challenges that they're facing that we can help with, for both like as Multiplier, as a solution, and solution partners that can help pair that solution to bridge those gaps.
And you have a really unique background, because you obviously have come in, you have a lot of experience administering Jira, but you also have an IAM background, which is not super typical for people that are in this space.
Yeah. So I was a MSP owner, and my primary focus was actually selling Jump Cloud, and that's an IAM tool. And that expanded into some other things, but I really heavily stayed passionate about it, because I think like it's the front door to your business, right? How do we create identities? How do we manage them? What do we give them? And the more security and compliance comes into it, it's like really super important. So I have a passion for it, even though I'm not a professional. So
yeah, awesome. Well, I think we're ready to get into it. I think you have a set of slides that you've put together for us. So yeah, super happy for you to go walk us through your materials.
Yeah, if we can get that slide up, cool. So just want to go through a few highlights here. Why is IAM critical to business, I think, and business workflows? Couple of key things that we kind of talked about was enhanced security, regulatory compliance, operational efficiencies. We're always trying to do better in our operations, our workflows, and how things go through a life cycle. The improved user experience, and then also like mitigating risks. I think these are kind of the top areas of like why it's important. But I think there's other key challenges that come with that, right? So I'm going to kind of scroll down to our challenges area, and we can start talking about that. So challenges and solutions in IAM adoption. There's always the integration complexity. Things integrate to Atlassian at a certain level, but then like we kind of get stuck in like, is there an API for this or an API for that, or a tool to help with this? also the understanding, like sometimes when we don't have an IAM team or IAM professionals that are kind of help guiding the practices, you have sysadmins. Where does it start? A lot
Yeah.
of people don't know. Like, is it the IAM tool itself? Is it our IDP, like um, Google or Entra or Zoho or any of those? Or is it like something totally different, right? Because the amount of tools we can get today is extravagant, and so that's kind of where that's at. So then some of the other challenges that we have are how do we manage the permissions and roles? What kind of methodology are we using across the organization? What does the tool itself do, right? And Atlassian role base is very prolific, but if you look at organization level, a lot of teams are trying to get to like the attribute model, right? And so you have to pair these two things together to make it exist. I think the one thing that really sticks out that we talked about real briefly was ensuring compliance. Whenever you're going through an audit, like 27,001 for ISOs or 9,000, they're going to ask, where did the identity start? How did they get access? Why do they have access? Is there a ticket that's involved or a workflow that's involved to get that access? And it's going to fit into these different compliance areas and codes. And so now we even are toppled with more complexity because now we have to fit that piece into there. And so the next thing that comes from that is, how do we scale it? How do we make it automated? How do we get approvals to align to allow people to get access, and the right person is approving those things? Scalability and performance is huge. Like, what can we do? What are the limits? How far can we take it? And when we're, like, we don't have an IAM team, but we have a systems admin team who's managing multiple things. Sometimes that's the last thing on their mind is like, I just want to automate it, but I don't know how to scale it. So let's just get it automated, right? And then lack of centralization of government. Like, who's overseeing these things? Is it a security team? Is it a compliance team? Is it a team that's kind of conglomeration of a lot of things and there's no real focus? So I think that's kind of where the challenges lie. And so I'm going to kind of scroll back up to talk about some key practices that help us with that. So centralizing identity management. So you might use Entra or Google or Zoho to create identities, right? But you might have another tool like JumpCloud, Okta, Ping that's actually managing it. So we have to kind of figure out, like, in our organizations today, where does this layer start? And I think that's one of the most confusing things, right? Like, have you seen that before, where it's kind of like the team's unsure of like what's going on? And so, so
I was going to say that there's so many sources of truth. Like sometimes it's the HRIS, sometimes it's the identity provider. Like it's not really clear where that comes from.
And I think as a business, like, it's almost in the higher talks, right? In some senses of like, well, where do you need it to be? And what is the front door for identities? And to my experience and knowledge is like, well, HR should control that because they're controlling who comes in and who doesn't, right? Who's going through that talent acquisition, who's getting approved to work, and who's not. And so I think it always has to start there. But I think in most orgs, there's like this blurred line of like unsure, unsure of how it should work. And so I think that the key practices is like finding what that source of truth is. What is the business's objective to control these things? And if there's compliance behind it, let's make sure that it's applicable to that, right? And then some key practices that come with it are single sign-on, multi-factor. Role-based access could be a combination of role-based or ABAC, which is attributed access. It could be automated provisioning, deprovisioning, could also include just-in-time provisioning for systems that don't include SCIM. And then auditing and monitoring. How are we validating these people in the systems? And so do we have a ticket that tracks that? And does that like compare to an audit log in time frame? Like, is there something similar that we can put the two against for audit purposes? And then monitoring, like, this user got access, today, but then like in our logs, it showed like tomorrow they access a system that necessarily they didn't have access to, right? And then how do we log that? How do you monitor that? And some of the IAM tools are getting better at that, but not one tool, like there's always gaps, right? In like what tools are doing what. And so we have to think about the holistic picture of like, what are the challenges? What are the like best practices around that or key practices? And then we can get into the finite like processes, right? How can we make it better? What can we do to fill those gaps? And so some of the gaps come back to our challenges, but then there's more, right? We just highlighted a small amount of them. And I think in my experience that there's no one tool to help. And I think it's like a combination of tools that can help us do that. And that kind of brings me back to like Multiplier. Every time I talk to a customer or I'm helping with trying to build that process is, do we have that process where it starts in a ticket? And if it does, how can we get that ticket to automate to the sources of truth and have that automatically happen based on an approval, right? And if there's no approval needed, like, can we just make sure that that's being done and that it's tracked in the systems for audit purposes? Because there's sometimes like, you know, a system might not be under scope in your compliance. So you're able to mitigate that, right? Like we have access controls. It's not under compliance today, but it could be tomorrow. So we need that pathway to help us get there. So I think that's like some of the big things that I like to talk about and get more awareness of, and tell like our sysadmin teams, like, you know, asking for an IAM professional to be on your side to help with these things is not bad, right? To add that person to the team, and if you can't, like, let's look at like what are the things that we can educate them on to help them further their you know, their practices. So, and then I think there is where we can segue into what things can help us, right? So definitely looking at our tools, because not every tool fits every purpose. And if we look at Atlassian's system of work, Atlassian sets a foundation for us to get identities into Atlassian. And as people start to align on Atlassian system of work and their teamwork foundations and their backend, the way that all the systems are communicating through Atlassian intelligence, it's making us easier to kind of track what's going on, but it's also becoming the main source of tracking, right? Like we're dumping data from Microsoft or from Google or from both. We're dumping from other different systems like the ERPs into there, and we're tracking everything collectively in one place, which is through Atlassian products, right? Confluence, Jira, JSM, etc. When we get everything in there based on our IAM practices, and we're giving people access right now today for most teams, it's very manual, right? Like the IDP team or the help desk team is provisioning these user accounts. They have to add into the HR team. They have to add them to there. They have to add them to this manually. And I think there are specific tools like Multiplier that can help give that time back so they can focus on more important things, right? And so I kind of want to go that way and ask you, like, how do you help? And I know how you help, but like, how can you help our audience understand how Multiplier can help? Because I think in my years of working with you, like I can speak to like how well the team has like adapted to other systems and tried to bring, you know, multiple different systems into Multiplier to be accessible, so that it's not like, you know, IAM isn't just specific to one place, it's specific to lots of things. So.
Yeah, I think I mean, onboarding is sort of the place where a lot of people start. Again, it depends on how sophisticated they are or how mature they are in their journey of IAM. So a lot of the times when we come in, it'll be because a new person comes in, a new head of IT comes in, and they'll see how they've been onboarding users, and typically they would have had JSM where their HR team is sort of filling out details of a new hire or a new employee they're wanting to onboard. And then from there, the IT person would have like typically manually gone into Entra or Okta and entered like that person's information. And so not only was it manual, but it's also error prone. And I think we've had people saying, oh, like, people start and like on day one and some of their details are incorrect. And so that needs to get fixed again. So that's obviously a place for us to start where we can sort of automate that. But I think the most value that we've seen is when once the employee is onboarded, how do you make sure that they can be productive and hit the ground running? And a lot of the times it comes back to ensuring that, okay, not only are we setting them up with the right access on day one, but also as on an ongoing basis, can we help them get access to the things they need without putting too many barriers and roadblocks on the way? Now, like, of course you're going to need approvals and things like that, and a lot of companies, they just don't want you to have access to everything all the time. So where we come in and where we can really help is we've built out integrations to IDPs, the most common ones like Okta, Jump Cloud, Google Workspace, Entra. And what we can really do is to enable that just in time access. And we really care about that, not only from an automation standpoint, but also from a security standpoint, and also from a I guess your license rationalization standpoint, where you're not overpaying for licenses that your team isn't really utilizing. So if I'm an engineer, I need access to production. I don't have long-standing access to it. I get it when I request it, and there's a justification for it. And we can do things like based on your department and role. Sometimes you don't need approvals. You might get pre-approved for certain resources. So I think that's where we really help. And as the organization grows in complexity and the fleet of the SaaS tools that you're managing grows, we can really free up a lot of time where IT has to be, the middleman, sort of the bottleneck in that process. They're the ones that are chasing the approvers to figure out if this person should get access or not. They're essentially sort of helping facilitate that process. But we really see an ideal world where most requests, bypass them in a way. Like they're not really needed to be the people sort of coordinating the process. Like they can just sort of set up the rules and the policies, and Multiplier can then take care of all of the grunt work of routing the approvals to the right people, waiting, like until the approval has been granted, and then once the approval gets granted, we can go and do the provisioning. And if they didn't, and if this request was time bound in terms of their access, we don't need for anybody to set calendar reminders. We do that for you as well. So we automatically revoke their access once that time has elapsed. So we really see our role as being the glue in the gears for this particular process. Which, as the company gets bigger and bigger, this is probably the biggest source of incoming IT tickets in an IT team's service desk.
Yeah, so that kind of reminds me of like some new things that like Jump Cloud and Okta have brought up. Like in Okta, you got those workflows that can help do some of that for you. But it's like, but if it's happening from the ticket, right? Like we need it happening from the front end of where, the IT help desk is working. It gives a lot more time back because we're not waiting for these things to be aligned to the identity team or to the sysadmin team. Like it can happen like right in our tickets and be assigned to the right person and executed through playbooks or automations through Multiplier. And I think that's where the power is. And also like, you want to make sure like all the tiles that I have access to, and it's like, hey, I kind of live by those tiles for my SSO, right? So it's like, if I see one appear there because I put a request in and it's time bound and it's gone the next day, that's why that happened, right? Like it was just a short time that I was supposed to have access. So I think that's really cool and keen that, you guys are able to help with those things. And I've seen it kind of change over time where like the way that you guys have introduced it working has changed. And I think that you guys are always forethoughtful about how that landscape is changing. So I can appreciate that too. Like, 2-3 years ago, it was in a very, like Multiplier was in a very different state. And I think like you have said, like we want to revolutionize this to be better over time. So we've moved away from like building our own heavy workflows within Multiplier to actually utilizing Atlassian's own automation tool to like integrate with Multiplier. Can you speak to a little bit about that?
Yeah, we try to leverage, we try to not reinvent the wheel where possible. So you, wherever wherever, I mean, again, sometimes we push the Atlassian platform to its edges, and we've been trying to work closely with the Atlassian team. One of the things that we've been working with them on, and we've recently announced, is the integration with the virtual agent in JSM. So we realized that a lot of modern companies that are adopting tools like JSM sometimes are a little bit reluctant to adopt the portal. I mean, we see the portal as being, like a really great experience for the end users and the employees at a company to get to have one centralized place to get access to what they like, to anything, right? From being able to, submit like requests for new hardware, software, but also like leave, submit PTO. Like, it's just a great place to have that one place for everything. And where it starts breaking is where you have like different, like where you have a different system for different requests. And so one of the things that we noticed was that a lot of companies were really keen on using Slack or Teams, because that's where their employees live all day. And so we love the virtual agent when we came out. So that was something that we've been wanting to integrate with for a long time, but it took us a while to get there, just because we wanted the experience for the user to be really nice, and for the admins who are setting it up to also be really nice. So sometimes it does take us a little while, but we try to leverage Atlassian and all the work that they're doing, whether that's with AI or whether that's within their automation engine. I mean, we get so much so much power built in to it. Like one of the things we like our customers really care about is having a really nice audit trail. So when you are like provisioning users or deprovisioning users, like being able to see, having one really nice place to see that is super essential. And so we just sort of tap into like your automate, we just tap into the comments on the issue, and so like that's a really nice audit trail, even though that may not be the purpose it was originally intended for. So that I think we try to apply those touches wherever possible, and yeah, we know that the reason why people are choosing us over some of the other solutions that are available is the fact that we're so super well integrated into like the tool that they're using to manage, sort of like run critical, like mission critical workflows in their company. So I think we try to stay really close to what Atlassian are doing. I know that the new Journey Builder is an interesting addition, so we're exploring ways to see how we can uh, potentially use that for some of the onboarding workflows that we integrate with. So that's going to be another new addition, and something that we're currently thinking about.
Yeah, so going back to that, I remember when I was working with Atlassian, I was one of the first 3 businesses to touch the virtual agent and actually work with it in its like pre-alpha state, and worked with the PMs and the team there. And it was really exciting. I remember talking to the PMs and the team over there, like, hey, I think we need to like integrate with Multiplier here,
Yeah.
and maybe Workato and like webhooks. Like we need that function for the power of the virtual agent to actually have that power, right? Like that front door capability to say like, oh yeah, I need access to this thing, and it does it for you, and it comes back and says, hey, that was applied, we can close this off, good job, right? And I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
when they actually implemented that stuff, they're like, hey, we're going to open it up to the webhooks. And I'm like, cool, because now I think that opens a door for
yeah.
Multiplier to help there. And they also just added like the automations piece and Workato, so it was like, hey, now we can actually make some really good
Yeah,
things happen in the IAM space that we couldn't.
definitely. I mean, we see a world. So the future that I see for Multiplier is to almost. ServiceNow recently bought a company called MoveWorks. I think a lot of people might have been familiar with them, and so they were doing a lot of these sort of like workflows, whether it was like answering a question that your employees might ask, or resetting their MFA passwords, or like granting them access to software through a chat-based interface. And that was sort of, I guess, what we really wanted to do for JSM. And when I think the virtual agent, they announced that at Team perhaps 3 years ago, and their demo originally was of an end user wanting access to Figma, and the access getting provision. And I remember asking them, hey, so is this thing real? How is this going to work? And they were like, yeah, it's going to use webhooks, but the actual implementation for like a IAM professional or an end user or Jira admin to configure those webhooks, that's still pretty complex. So I think for most people, building that in-house like tooling is a challenge. And I think where we step in is we really simplify the need to like not have to figure out how to like build those like webhooks and construct those yourselves and figure out how to do auth and stuff like that. Like we do all of that for you in a much more secure, compliant manner. So I think that I'm really excited about making that more mainstream. I think the virtual agent is still not as widely adopted as I thought it would be. So yeah, really excited, hoping and really excited to see that take off.
Yeah, so we're getting in quite a few number of requests coming in with the virtual agent. So I think that's exciting because we get to actually put it into play now. I've built a lot of it in proposition and like the testing grounds, right? And I helped do it for a few companies, but nothing extravagant to where it was like revolutionizing the IAM. But like I picture that the virtual agent be that kind of IAM front door. Leading into that, there's a question in there, and I know we said we're going to save them, but I think it's a really great topic, is where does Rovo play in the IAM, and does Rovo and Multiplier become like a team to like help execute these things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely like really interested in this space, and I'm keeping pretty close tabs on Rovo. As of today, I believe Rovo understands context of your company's like knowledge. So Rovo definitely knows like where like the right documents are, and it can fetch answers. I am a little bit like unsure where Rovo and the virtual agent like do they become the same thing? Or how do they work together? So I think like I'm curious. Do you have a sense into like how these might work?
Yeah, I do. I think like today you can build your own Rovo agents with Forge.
Yeah.
Right? And so you got this power of Forge and this power of Rovo that is grabbing all of your information, but also able to apply actions now. And you can use custom Rovo agents to apply actions. You can use, the no code build Rovo agents to apply actions. And I think it's really great because as long as like Multiplier is providing those automations hooks from automations for Jira, we can make Rovo actually do some of that for us. And so that I think the power of Multiplier is like where you took in it today and been saying like, hey, we're going to start using automations for Jira to couple some of this, but we're going to give them the basis for it. So I think I think there's a place there for both of that, but where does it live? Because the virtual agent kind of lives in the portal, but Rovo kind of lives on the other side, right? So where do we want it to sit? Is everything happening at the request front door, or is some things ad hoc and Rovo can take care of it and create a ticket and do all of that stuff for you?
Well, one of the use cases for people that use Multiplier today is wanting to know, hey, who has access to this resource, and why were they given access to this? And if you could ask Rovo that question, and Rovo could say, hey, this so and so submitted a request, here's their ticket, and they had access until this date, and then it was revoked. I think that would be a lot nicer for that to be a conversational, like in a chat sort of interface, rather than having to dig through like Multiplier and go through like find that user. So I think that could be really really interesting. And so there's definitely like as they open up more integration points for partners, we are trying to be at the forefront of like how we can leverage those. One of the things that we're working on also, and I think Rovo has the ability for third parties to provide or like Rovo actions, as you mentioned. So we're considering bringing some of those actions into like Jira automation as well. So being able to trigger, and as you said, right, the virtual agent now has the ability to trigger automations as well. So I think that's a really good hook for us to like provide some of these actions for Rovo, and then automation can go and trigger those. So yeah, it's all starting to like, all the pieces are slowly starting to like come together. So I think I'm really excited to see how it all sort of fits in, like maybe in 12 to 18 months time.
I see Josh is in the audience today too. And I think he's another great IAM person, like he's got such great experience in the Atlassian ecosystem, and he's a creator. And I think like, you know, talking about these things today, I think he can resonate with a lot of this stuff, because I've seen him talk about this, and I think he's a really good example of like how we should do things. And I think he can also help bring Multiplier to like that level of knowledge for people. I've seen him talk about certain things in IAM and, you know, access management, and being able to like onboard and offboard people seamlessly. And I think like I don't see that happening with just automations for Jira by itself. I think like if you really want it to work well, I always say like you should get Multiplier. That's my kind of thing. Is like I push that because like I've seen where that middleware doesn't accomplish all the things that we need it to. And I think that like with everything Atlassian's giving us with Forge today, with Rovo, with Atlassian Intelligence, like the key piece to that IAM spectrum is actually Multiplier. Like, you know, being able to fit that in where it needs to be, because it might be different for each business. And that going back to our IAM challenges, right, is like, where does it fit for us? Where do these actions have to happen? And it's not concrete. There's no one way to do it, right? It could be at the help center. It could be in Teams. It could be in Slack. It could be in a different web page, right? It could be in Confluence. Like, could be so many places. And so like we have to identify where the gaps are as solution partners. We have to identify what works for the team and doesn't. And then what we have to do is apply these concepts. And I think as a solution partner, we have to have our tool set. And so for me, it's like, well, I got to have Multiplier there with me for this specific use case of like onboarding, offboarding, and access management, so that I can make it happen from a ticket and I can automate it for the team based on the variables, right? I think another key feature that I really loved about Multiplier was back in the day in the ticket, you could have that front door to Okta and Jump Cloud. And instead of like automating it, you could have the responsibility of that action happen from the ticket to the place that we're giving access and close it out, where some places don't want automation. And I think we have to think about that. Like there's sometimes we shouldn't automate things, right? We should make a manual process and let it be logged on the ticket that this was like, this happened in that portion of it.
That was very counterintuitive for me when I saw people using that. So what Aaron is talking about is on the Multiply, on the Jira issue, we would pull up the user's attributes from Okta or Entra on the issue sidebar and give people the ability to modify the groups a user was in directly from the ticket. So it would avoid the need for context switching. But we always thought that was like that's kind of where we started before we could fully automate that, and we were surprised at how many people wanted and preferred to use that manual workflow because maybe they didn't fully trust the automation, or they didn't. They wanted to feel more in control, and their process had previously involved like having people do these things. So maybe people like eventually might change, but. I think, I think it was still pretty eye-opening to see people preferring to do that, sort of go through that workflow.
Yeah, I've seen where some places actually mandated it, right? And so they were like, we can't automate this because of the specificness of the process and the process being like written down that way. So it was really cool back then, like to know that we had choices of like how to use the tool. And I think whenever we're talking about that, the tools that are helping us enable these processes the right way, that they are flexible enough to, you know, go with. And that's why I brought that one up, because I thought, hey, you know, that's a pretty good flex for, you know, our identity access management workflows to be able to navigate that where process tells us we can't do something.
Yeah. So Stu has a question, and I think I kind of maybe want to actually add to this a little bit as well. So Stu is wondering, for those that are wanting to sort of like self-check their JSM situation, particularly, after going through migration, what areas are overlooked? And I think you're sort of, I guess, right in the middle of that with all the data center migrations that are happening as well, that you're sort of like responsible for. So that's a big change, right? Not only are they moving from data center to cloud, but at the same time they're trying to bring all of their other applications also, I guess, to the cloud. And so yeah, like how do you what do you think are like the lowest hanging fruit, or like the areas that are the most overlooked for some of these folks?
Yeah, I think like the self checkout is great when it's applicable, right? When it doesn't need an approval, because then it's like, oh, I need an approval, I gotta wait, right? But I think those actions happening at that time after the approval being automated kind of make it more self checkout. It's just we're waiting for somebody to give their approval. As far as like at the portal, like using assets or something to have like your, I guess, your kind of pick tray of what you want to get access to or what you need, and then having those actions happen in the background are key to what Multiplier kind of helps us do. I think, we can set that this is going to create a ticket, or at the VA, like we're asking for this specific thing, and then it's actioning it based on what Multiplier has been set up to do. And I think that self-serve is always a great model. Like Jamf and some of the other MDMs have really taken off to try and do that, so that we're less overhead on the administration portion of getting access. And I think when you compare that, it's the same thing from the IAM space, right? Like it's still access control in some point of view. It's just for a different medium, right? It might be for hardware rather than for software. So I think like if you're migrating to the cloud and you want to add this self-checkout, you want to add these automated processes, that's exactly why people are going to the cloud, right? Is for that to happen. So
Yeah, absolutely.
there was another question there too.
There was one about templating user roles. Are you? I think that we might have missed that one. Do we want to? You want to take that one?
Yeah, I think that's a good one to start with.
Yeah.
Can you template user role? I'm wondering if that's like talking about like process wise, like within IAM tools or IDP tools, or if that's like a multiplier question. So
Well, I guess we can tackle both. Like I can take it from the multiplier side. I know you can cover the IAM side. So within the on the multiplier end, we let you build out sort of workflows where you can essentially match for department. So you can say if I'm hiring this person and we're sort of creating a new hire onboarding ticket for them, and we're putting in their department, based on their department being a certain value, you can then say, okay, to go and do these things, and add them to these groups in Entra, for example, as they're getting onboarded. So yes, we have customers building out sort of templates for like based on departments, the most common one that we've seen. But I know that you can with ABAC, you can do some of this on the IDP side as well. So what have you seen being common?
So I think a lot of teams have kind of moved away from RBAC at the IDP and the IAM tool side because it's restrictive, right? It's kind of, and I think the RBAC has really been kept more for the system side, right? Like Atlassian or whatever system we're getting access to, right? Like using role-based there makes a lot of sense. And because Atlassian tools have moved like Confluence into the RBAC model, it makes it easier for us to provision the right licensing on the IDP side and IAM tool. And so, but at that side, it's like we have 400 tools that we need to like encompass. So what we really want to do is whittle down, where are these attributes that make them the same, right? So there's like this big exercise we do where we grab all the data from all these systems and we table it and we pivot it into like this big table to see like where are the inherent things that are the same. And that's where we can create these attributes and apply them to wider groups of people based on that. So it's not effective to, one system. It's effective to the global situation of the business. Things do people need when they get onboarded? And I think that's where like ABAC becomes very important, and where I'd like teams to like go down that route to learn more about that, so that we're not thinking about just Atlassian in the sense of when we're looking at the IAM perspective. We have to actually think holistically about a lot of things. And then we can have better controls in place, because then, someone from HR and IT and marketing might all need the same set of tools access into Atlassian, but they might not like need for like a marketing tool. Like they're not all going to get that access, right? So outreach, like the marketing team needs that, and maybe the sales teams need that, but like the IT guy doesn't need access to that. So trying to look at it more holistically and a bigger picture. So I think that's one of the reasons I'm passionate about this, is because when I'm sitting with a client, I'm asking the tough questions like, where does it start? What other departments are influenced by this or capture the same attributes, I guess you could say? What mitigates their access level, so I'm asking all these tough questions, and a lot of times they haven't thought about it, right? Because it wasn't a concern for them. So if we can have those talks early, when we're talking about building a system of work with Atlassian, we're more effective, right? Because we're hitting lots of different teams that are using the tools, and we can onboard them smooth in a better way, right? Because we can use the IAM tool, Atlassian, and Multiplier to say, like, these are the things that intersect and what they need. We can build templated roles or those things to like what they're actually getting access to and why, and then have it audited, right? We have that audit trail, and we have that way to alert and monitor on that stuff. So
I mean, I know we've talked a lot about sort of onboarding today, but I think one area that I also find gets a little bit overlooked is sort of like privilege sort of creep as employees move through companies. Like you might start off, like in support, but then maybe you move to a different department. Maybe you move to marketing, and like over time, like the things you have access to just builds up, and stuff never really gets taken away. Like, is that a concern? And have you seen that? Like, have you witnessed that yourself? And like, what should companies be doing to like think about something like that?
So I think when we're talking about like the onboarding, offboarding, I don't think there's been a situation where I didn't say, did we talk about transfers or change, like HR changes, right? And when I say changes, I mean transfers to one department or the other. And when that happens, like usually we've built the ticketing to work with IT and HR on the same level. So I'll give you a quick example of that. So like onboarding, offboarding, ticket gets created on the HR side. There's a mirror image of that created to IT, but only with the data that IT is able to see. Same thing when we're talking about a transfer, that is then mitigated there so that we can mitigate those access changes. So then we can actually look at the IAM tool. We can actually look into the sources of truth, like what did they have and what do they need now? And in that way, it's very manual, right? But if we can make the systems help update that person's like transfer, we've now mitigated so much time, right? For usually like when we're doing onboarding, offboarding, and transfers, those help desk guys are just going crazy. I've worked at places where they're doing 50, 60 in onboarding week, and they're going nuts trying to get out all their laptops and get their identities created and turn the ones off that left last week. And like there's this rush to do all this, and then transfers, and it's all manual. So if we can find out where things intersect and where those things change, we can help bridge those gaps and give them time back to do other things. Because IT help desk, doesn't matter what level they work in or if there is no levels, like those guys are running rampant all the time. So let's try and help them get through their day faster and find out where we can automate those things. Yeah, for sure. But I think like the transfer one is a touchy one, because I think that's where things fall through the most, right? Like, John Doe was in IT systems and left to go to finance, and now he's got access to all of these systems, and he doesn't know he has access to these systems, but he stumbled upon it, kind of.
Yeah, we've noticed. I mean, we ended up like we started obviously with like the building these workflows, and then we kind of realized that like helping answer these questions about like what additional access and like stuff that people shouldn't have, like how can we surface that. We ended up building out our access reviews like feature for that. And yeah, it was really interesting to see when we would help find like orphaned accounts, people that had been deactivated in Okta or Entra, but would still have access to would still be assigned like to groups that had applications being granted to them. So there were these things that came up, and I feel like that's an area that like especially for if you're like going for a SOC 2 or an ISO audit, like you need to catch those things, because auditors are going to find those and ask you some really tough questions.
Yeah, and then you're going to be sitting there during audit like, oh, we got these MSs, right? So you don't
Yeah.
want those. Yeah, I think that segues a good spot right there, because audit logs. It's not just audit logs that are important, it's auditing, right? So when we're talking about IAM, we're talking about access control. At the end of the day, we need to be auditing these. And I usually tell this to my Atlassian customers too, like, we should be auditing your Atlassian system of work every year. Like, you know, the whole data set we should be going through. Where can we clean up? Where, same thing with IAM. I think doesn't matter what system you use, the same concepts, right? We should be auditing that system. We should be auditing, like, to find um, orphaned, accounts, or even service accounts that have gone dry and nobody's using. Like, they're not
Mhm.
applying automation, but we've seen they've been accessed and they shouldn't have been accessed. Like, we should be going through that in best practice every year. And making sure that we're staying on top of that, not just for compliance, but for our own security posture, right? Like, that's the front door. That's where people get access. So let's look at that. And I think that's a great concept that you've brought with the assessment tool and looking at that, because it makes it a lot easier to be able to evaluate that when there's a tool that's already grabbing that data for you, and you can make a quick look to say, hey, let's go look at these accounts first, right? Let's go look at these in the source of truth to see what we need to clean up. The other thing is the orphans between the HRS system and the IDP or the IAM tool. Like, we have to make a comparison to all of these things. And a good example of that is worked at a 3D printing company, and we were doing a similar audit, and we found, like, there was a system that somebody had to manually, like, enter manually. There was no, like, skim or JIT, or there was no way to, like, intersect that because it's an old system. And so we had the audit trail of the tickets, but the tickets weren't matching up with the data set, from
Yeah.
the implementation. And so it was like, well, now we got to audit this full system against what we have here, and get that set back to par, because that system was so old and had carried so much data. So
Yeah, that's something actually, like, that's a good segue to another question I was going to ask you, because like a lot of the times we get questions from people coming in that say, hey, we have, like, we're starting to onboard onto, like, scheme provisioning, but we, like, a lot of our apps still, like, don't have SSO. How should they be thinking about, like, access control for those apps? Like, what would you say, like, that they should do when it comes to thinking about, like, okay, like, I'm still sort of on that journey to, like, get to SSO, but I'm sure you've heard of the SSO tax. I mean, like, some of the applications, like, you have to get on their enterprise tier to get SSO. That may not be feasible for a lot of companies. So how would you recommend folks approach that scenario?
yeah, I say, like, so that we used to have this process, and we had a name for it where I used to work, and it was the security compliance team kind of came up with this methodology. And what it was like an assessment of every SaaS app, right? And the SaaS apps, that, like, what controls did they have and what didn't they? And we had a baseline minimum of what we said had to be configured. And if the apps didn't offer this, they couldn't be in our ecosystem. And I think that's where we have to draw the line. So what do you follow for compliance? What compliancy regulations do you want to follow, even if you're not mandated to follow anything because you're not SOX yet? Underlining, like, under some security and compliance methods is actually really healthy. Like, we started to use NIST as, like, our guideline, right? And we were trying to fit all of our data into NIST because that goes across to, like, most compliances. And so we built this, like, SaaS audit where we would, like, look at, like, what SaaS tools do we have, what are their security configurations, what do they offer for, similarly to, like, Atlassian, is there guard, are there, different features that help with onboarding, offboarding, or provisioning, deprovisioning, SSO, um, audit logging, like, all of those things. But then also there was things past that. And one of the things was, like, if they didn't fit these specific I guess you could say, codes that we had built, then it wasn't allowed to be in the ecosystem. And it really got some teams upset because they're like, well, I need that tool to do my job. And it was like, but it doesn't fit the mold and we got to stay compliant. And this is when we were going to stay. So sometimes you have to make the hard choice. But I think the long story short is build that out to know like what's applicable for your ecosystem, for your business. And that will help you stay on par for that. I think one of the mandates was that if it didn't have SSO, it had to have like just-in-time provisioning, at least like the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And that if we were doing manually offboarding of that, it had to go through our vendor management system so that we would know like, hey, nobody's using this no more. We're going to turn off all the users. We're going to manually get them out of the system, and then we're going to decommission that. So there was like a process flow that we had to. So I think a lot of times it comes back to process. Like it's not about, it's about your standing operating procedures, your process, and then the tool.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I think the angle that I was also coming at it from is that, sometimes it is just like, I guess the like a concern with like the budget that you might have. And like some of these vendors definitely push you like to be on like a tier that maybe isn't palatable for your business right now to like get on SSO. So how do you sort of handle that? And that's something that we've been like really thinking about. How can we help like some of the smaller like companies that want to eventually get to that state but can't today. And so we've been looking at interesting like applications of using some sort of RPA to have like a multiplier service account go and do that provisioning that gets triggered through Jira. So even though we're not using their APIs, can we sort of still automate provisioning and deprovisioning for you in the background? And that's an area that we've been exploring. So we'll hopefully have some interesting things to share about that in the future. But I can see that being super helpful if you're not if you're like an SMB and you still want to make sure your security posture is tight. I think that could be an interesting area.
So if you're talking about that side, I think we have like in the past built like mini systems, right, to help with that. We had built Google scripts to help do that. We also had middleware. Actually, I think it's Better Cloud, where we were using Better Cloud to actually help with that process and using APIs to like, help provision the users based on whatever's in our IAM tool, so that we could still control that. And then when they needed to be offboarded, that script would go in there and remove that user access. Along with toppling with like Better Cloud's workflow system, that it could help do that, where maybe it was applicable for some systems, but then it didn't have access for some systems. So I think you have to kind of have to like find all of the different things that make it work. And there's this long string, but I think at the front door, like, I think that like, I'm really appreciative of where Multiplier can help bridge that gap with a lot of things. You look at like the cost of like Better Cloud, Ricardo, all these things, like they're super expensive, and businesses don't want to put that much into that because they're budget conscious. And I think again, that's where Multiplier really helps, because you're not, you're not going to blow your budget for that, and it's not just budget conscious, but like it has so many different use cases that it can facilitate, right? And I think like actually after this, I'm like, hey, it's time to go play with Multiplier and Rovo and see what I can build. So, because I think you already have like the basis of it that we could start to, use that. So
cool. Well, no, this has been a great discussion. I don't see any other questions. Did you have any other sort of parting thoughts or comments before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think I have just some like best practices to leave everybody with. Like when they're talking about IAM, and this is more like outside of the tool, like start with like comprehensive assessments, like assess your whole workflow today, how you do things, assess your tooling, assess how access works today and how you want it to work, and draw that out, map it out, right? Use a whiteboard or, Draw.io or whatever you're comfortable with, Lucid charts, and draw that out so you can get a clear business picture of what's going on, and assess what the tools can do. That's why I'm saying build your own little assessment for your SaaS apps. leveraging centralized tools. So Atlassian is like that system of work, but it does offer things like Guard to help with some of that, right? Centralizing on tools like Jump Cloud Ping, maybe that sit on top of your current IDP so that you have more granularity in what you can do. And then define clear policies, right? Define those in the ABAC models or the RBAC models or the least privilege or a combination of all of those. Automate user lifecycle where you can. If you can use Skim to help just get those accounts deactivated, use Skim. A lot of times JIT doesn't help us do that. It lets us create them, but not decommission them. And that's where we get stuck, where like that offboarding becomes more manual. So if you can use Skim, use it. Monitor your environments and audit regularly. I would say every quarter, it's good to audit every quarter. And I've helped build other companies with that audit every quarter, where we're auditing these systems and the access. And even if you're provisioning like deprovisioning users automatically through your ticketing system and using Multiplier and using these tools to leverage the advantage, we still need to audit it, right? We still need a picture, and that's why the assessment tool is so good, right? Like we need that clear picture, and we should making like the sysadmins and the owners of these tools responsible for that audit too, right? That they're double checking, did Jane Doe and John Doe have access? Do they still need access? Like ask the questions. It's okay to do some of it manually when it comes to the audit, because we have to ask the hard questions to keep compliant. And the last thing, educating end users. How does our tools work? Why are we doing it this way? What does the process flow look like? I think education goes a long way, even if it's just a Loom video, right? So.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like helping the users understand like the process and sort of like why it works, and they're there to help assist them and provide the guardrails. I think it's always a good sort of like way to give them the context of why things are the way they are. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think this was super helpful. Like this, I learned so much. Thanks again to everybody that dialed in today. Hopefully, you were able to answer all of the questions and the burning sort of like topics around identity and access management. As it, I guess, when it comes to being in Jira, which we all are. And if you have any other questions, feel free to DM either Aaron or myself. But Aaron, this has been, I had a blast chatting to you. Is there anything else you want to leave the audience with?
Thanks for coming. I just want to educate. And I think that's like the best part, is just sit here with you and educate. And I'm learning things today too, like with the questions about Rovo and intelligence. And I think like just keep learning and enjoy what you do in the IT space. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Thanks everybody. Look out for a recording of the session.